Welcome to a special edition of the Darden Admissions podcast. I'm your host, Brett Twitty, and you're listening to a new episode. On this episode of the podcast, I'm excited to share my recent conversation with Marc and Shizuka Modica. Marc and Shizuka are both faculty here at the Darden School of Business, and I recently connected with them to talk more about global courses here at the Darden School, specifically our global course offerings in Japan, South Korea, and Vietnam. I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation. So without further ado, here is my interview with Marc and Shizuka Modica. Marc, Shizuka, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you.
All right, Marc, how's everything? How are you doing?
I'm doing well. It's a beautiful winter day. I'm looking out at the mountains and enjoying this conversation with you.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here. Shizuka, how are you doing? You having a great day?
Yes, I am, because I finished my last class for the semester with another institution this morning. So I'm feeling good.
Okay, well, congratulations. And thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I'm looking forward to this conversation. Marc, I'd like to start with you and talk a little bit more about your background. Tell us who you are and what do you do here at Darden?
Well, my name is Marc Modica. I'm a senior lecturer here at Darden, and I have been since 1998. My major area of interest is negotiation and conflict transformation. I'm in the leadership communication area, and I also have a passion for doing global courses, courses that are taught in different places around the world. So that's kind of what I did.
All right. Shizuka, tell us more about you. Who are you and what's your background?
Okay, that's a big question that I still don't have an answer to. So I don't know how to answer that really. But anyway, what I currently do is to teach at three different institutions, leadership theory and also organizational behavior, and also teach how people make meaning in their work. And my career sort of has been, or had been, in higher education administration for the first 20 years. And I switched over from the higher ed administration to the faculty side when I finished my PhD at the University of Virginia. So that's who I am.
All right. I will note a little bit of podcast history. This is the first husband and wife interview we've ever had here on the podcast. Marc, how did you and Shizuka meet?
We met a long time ago when I was a student in Japan, and she was a student in Japan. Shizuka was she was born and raised in Japan, and we met in Kyoto. So we met there, got married. Then there was a bunch of education and returning to Japan in what year was that? 1988, to a place called the International University of Japan, which is a graduate school of international management and international relations. And that's where I met all the Darden people that introduced me to Darden and was the reason we transitioned here in 98. Shizuka started out in administration and then decided to retool before we got back to the States.
Yeah, Shizuka, I was really struck by your story. It's not easy to move from administration to faculty. How did you make that change? Obviously, a PhD was part of that, but how did you decide that was a change that you wanted to make?
I even didn't know that I wanted to make that transition. It just happened. So that's a mystery of life, right? But I was completely taken by this sacred space in higher education, so-called learning space. So as an international education administrator, I was completely sold for this sacred space where higher education can offer to students and also faculty. And I delighted in assisting faculty members deliver their best classrooms and all of that. But as I went through, let me back up. And I was interested in high-performing institutions or high-performing colleges and universities. So, and when I did my master's, I just didn't get enough of it. So I decided to pursue PhD on high-performing institutions. And when you focus on high-performing institutions, it seems that there are lots of people inside them, right? So I had to go down from the institutional level down to individual psychology of high performance. So that's where I started to learn about high performance and its connection to meaning making. And so I just did my PhD on how people construct meaning in their work. And after the fact that I finished my PhD, I just started to teach. So it wasn't even, going to the national or international market to become a faculty. So life has a very mysterious, twist to it, even you without asking for it.
That is a great story. Thank you for sharing that. Mark, you mentioned a little bit about your areas of interest. You've helped out with global courses. Are there any courses that you're teaching currently or you've recently taught that you would want to share here?
Oh, well, Shizuka and I teach a global course in South Korea. We teach one in Japan, and I teach one in Vietnam currently. I've done others in Sweden and Sri Lanka and India and China, etc. But those are the ones we're working on now. 3 different locations, 3 different opportunities to explore with the students a variety of topics. So in Vietnam, it's sort of the complicated relationship between Vietnam, China, and the United States, particularly around supply chain and, the changing economy in Vietnam. In South Korea, it's this amazing story of a country that has gotten so much visibility in the last 5-10 years with its soft power efforts. And its economy is just booming in a very interesting way. And of course, Japan, we're very familiar with that. And our course there focuses on tradition meets innovation. It's that sort of the mystery of how Japan can be so, in some respects, well, in every respect, very traditional, in some respects, rather backward, and yet in other respects, absolutely unbelievably innovative and perfectionist in what it produces. So those are the 3 areas. Shizuka, do you have any comments on the courses we teach?
Yes, and we can spend hours on end on the topic, but it's from my personal perspective, all these global courses are not really about one particular culture or country, but it's more like expanding your perspectives to the unknown and how to figure out who you are like in new environment and how to respond to new environment as a global leader. So that's why I'm really fascinated to experience with students in a different country how we perceive even the same event and incidents. And it's so delightful to be with our students and see how they respond, react, and we get to discuss how they are taking it in or have any resistance to any of the experiences. And all these things, I think, challenges your assumptions that we never get to even become aware of that we are having these assumptions. until you had something jarring. Yeah, so that's why I love these global courses.
Well, if it's okay with y'all, I'd like to talk a little bit about each of the courses that Mark just mentioned, Vietnam, South Korea, and Japan. And Mark, is it okay if we start with Vietnam? Is that all right? Does that feel like an okay place to start?
Sure, it would be fabulous. And yet at the same time, I want to add something to what Shizuka said, which is these are short courses, and although they have these foci, right, as I described them before, really each one of them functions, as Shizuka explained, as a opportunity to reflect on oneself and one's own experiences. And the metaphor that we often use is the distant mirror, that this is something that you hold at a distance that allows you to reflect back on your own assumptions and sort of presumptions about the way business is done. With Vietnam, obviously the interest there is to reflect on a market economy functioning under the guidance of the Communist Party. The party there is really rather indifferent to any specific philosophical take on economics. And I would say maybe difficult to imagine it as a truly communist party, but they have an interest in guiding society, guiding the economics, and retaining their ability and power to guide. So it's really interesting to see how decisions are made around free markets and economic control. So it's really fascinating. One of our visits is to a company called Viettel, which is one of their big telecom companies. They have three, all of them controlled by the government. And the one we visit is controlled by the Ministry of Defense. And it's really quite an unusual visit. You come into the room and all the floor is laid out very formally. You sit facing each other in this conference room, everyone with a nameplate and a microphone. They refer to our delegation and your delegation. They have a bust of Ho Chi Minh at the end of the room and a big flag. And it's quite an interesting visit to sort of ask questions and see how they manage answering in ways that are politically appropriate and of interest to the students. So that's just an example, the one in Vietnam. We visit the port there. We visit an electric car manufacturer called VinFast that is setting up shop in North Carolina very soon. So it's a variety of experiences. We spend the days together on sort of scheduled meets, both, I don't think you can make a distinction, but cultural and business. And then evenings are free, and we encourage the students to explore on their own, but still keeping a mind toward that reflective attitude, going to places they might not usually go to, meeting people they might not usually see. So that's Vietnam. We're in Hanoi for about half of the program, and we're in Ho Chi Minh City or Saigon for the other half. And so there's plenty to see, plenty to do. And my great joy is to travel with a group of very, very bright people who ask questions that I may never have imagined to ask. So these courses really offer an opportunity to have an experience that you can't have anywhere else. It's my favorite way, one of my favorite ways to explore the world is with one of these Darden worldwide courses.
So Shizuka, do you have a favorite memory or experience from one of the global courses, something that stands out to you?
Okay. Everything, I guess. However, I'm a K-drama fan, And I have become also a K-pop fan. So the intersection between what I know about South Korea and what I can confirm on site have been very personally fascinating to me. And also learning before we go, actually, this is sort of the part of the structure for all the global courses, up to 10 different topics about the country. And students do group work to prepare a briefing report on one topic. And before we go to the specific country, we learn about certain things, fundamentals of the society or a country, right? So those things that we learn beforehand can be proven true or contradictory, or who knows? So that part of learning is always fun, even if it's second time or third time, or, my native country of Japan. So I always find something new wherever I go. So that has been a tremendous joy. And just I do that not by myself, but with other people. And you could see how students are discovering something new about themselves and about different countries and how they do businesses. And again, bringing out their assumptions that they were not aware of. So that's really building your capacity of resilience as a leader. So I will stop here. Mark wants to say something.
I don't want to interrupt you. I just wanted to add to what you're saying. Shizuka and I always refer to our group, right? Us, the students, the people on the ground that we work with, as a community of inquiry rather than just the class, right? And this pretty much fits the Darden model, but it's an in situ case where we're actually inside the case itself. And so the questions that we explore may not really have decisive or conclusive answers, but it's examining the world through this multiplicity of lenses and with the inside this community of inquiry that's so much fun. Now, the thing is, Shizuka knows a lot about Japan, and I lived there for 15 years, so I know something about it. The trick there is when students ask us questions, sometimes we're tempted to answer. And you need to resist that temptation, because my interpretation, or Shizuka's, is not really the point. The point is exploring the topic. When we go to a new place, like the first time I went to Vietnam, I didn't have that problem. I knew nothing more than the students. And it actually works to a sort of advantage of just being able to, look each other in the eye and go, what do you make of this? Have you ever seen this before? How would you interpret that? So it's being knowledgeable is helpful, but also being ignorant can be very helpful as well in this work.
What we call in contemporary study area, it's a don't know mind, right? But as we build our expertise as a business person or a leader or CEO of a company, we become know-it-all person. But that's a dangerous place to be. But I think without really different experience, we tend to forget this. So I think global courses, they all try to bring in that don't know mind. So that's what I really like about it. And going back to your original question of what I do like about South Korea, and literally I'm fascinated with their government business relationships, because South Korea has done a tremendous work to promote their economy and their national products. starting with K-pop, K-drama, and also bringing back all the brain drain from the old days back into their country so that they will have sufficient talent to maintain their, economic development. So I am truly fascinated about their partnership between the government and businesses. So, yeah.
Mark, tell us a little bit more about what the South Korea course looks like in terms of companies you visit, experiences that the students have.
Oh, Shizuka, can you help me with this? One of my favorite places to go in any country is the port. I always try to work a port in because it gives you such a great perspective on the economy, on the functioning of the government, and its relationship to the economy, its management style. So we go to the port in Busan. The two cities we visit in South Korea are Seoul, obviously, and Busan, which is the southern big port city. Also in Busan, we visit a company called Kisswire, which has a fascinating story. As you know, the Japanese were overrunning all of Korea for quite a while and were finally forced out in 1945 at the end of the war. That's the year that this company was started by a Korean family, actually, and it's still owned by this. They produce cable and wire. I think it's 80% of the wire in radial tires all around the world comes from their factories. They produce cables that are hold up bridges that you have undoubtedly crossed over. And they are a family that's very philanthropic and community minded. It's a great example of the Korean sort of attitude toward being responsible, not just in the financial way, but in the social way as well. It's a great case study in stakeholder, sort of management. Where else do we go, Shizuka?
Yes, and I would like to just tag on to that Kisswire visit. And when you go to South Korea or Asian countries, you really don't see company representatives talking about business models. This is the business model that we use, and this is the profit margin that we have. They really don't talk about those things up front. So for our MBA students, that itself is a shock. And in terms of communicating their businesses to the external world is so different. So that itself is a fascinating visit. But at the same time, we have lots of Darden alumni in South Korea too, right? Across the globe. And we invite them to talk with us. And then they know how Western businesses operate. So they give us the information that we are looking for, their business models and business strategy and how to maximize the profit, right? So that type of contrast and having different people interact with us in a different country has been tremendous learning opportunities, at least for me and for our students. Okay, and yeah.
It sounds like there's also time for K-pop on this trip as well.
Oh yes, we do. We do have we have representative sort of entertainment agency representative talk to us, and that was eye-opening. And we also had a K-pop dancing lesson that we tremendously enjoyed. And of course, we had lots of, Korean barbecue lunches and stuff like that. So, yeah, there is a mixture of cultural experiences and also business, exposure. Yeah. So
we also had the speaker from the central bank as one of our opening speakers that was actually introduced to us through connections at Darden and at UVA. But he is the former ambassador from South Korea to the United States. So very knowledgeable, very highly placed guy. And the next year he had one of the people that he works with, a woman, not young, but not old, who got her MBA in the United States and wicked smart, who met with the students. So we have a variety of speakers who are Korean or Japanese or Vietnamese, who are expats working in the country, who are people who are born and raised in the country, left and have gone back, or whose parents had left and now they're going back. So it's a really interesting combination of perspectives, right? The foreign perspective, the domestic perspective, the bicultural perspective. We had a speaker in Vietnam who was introduced by one of the EMBA students, and they had become acquainted because each of them had been a presidential fellow at the White House at one point in their careers. Our student was a retired brigadier general in the American Army, and she's retooling at Darden for her new career. But this guy was amazing. He was older. He is older. He's going to be speaking with us again in February, in a couple of weeks. He left Vietnam as a kid at the age of 15 on a boat as a refugee, and floated around off the coast of Malaysia until he was finally rescued, ended up in the United States and got apparently quite an education and became a very, very wealthy venture capitalist who then decided to return to Vietnam and invest there and start up social enterprises. He runs, he funds and operates a school, a not-for-profit, for children in Vietnam. Very, very interesting guy. So that's an example of the sort of diversity we look for in our speakers. Yeah.
One of the things, before we talk about the Japan course, one of the things I just want to underscore for listeners, I know I said trip inadvertently a couple times, but these are not trips. These are very much courses. And I think it's an important distinction for people to know. I know, Mark, that's something that you and I have talked about. Any perspective you'd like to offer on this distinction between this is a course, not a trip?
This is a deeper dive, and it's intellectually engaging, as it should be at every step along the way. As I said before, being with a community of inquiry like this really allows you to, in nuclear physics, in particle physics, how do they figure out what's going on inside the atom? Well, they shoot particles at each other from all of these different directions and see how they bounce off each other, metaphorically. And through a collection of all of those, you start to get an idea of what the atom looks like, or what subatomic particles look like. This experience is focused on that kind of learning in situ. Just as an aside, Shizuka and I have become disinclined to taking trips in our free time and like to try to recreate some of this when we are traveling on our own. For example, when we were in Myanmar, well, I don't know how many years ago, more than a decade maybe, we called up the embassy there and arranged for some company visits there. Met the guy at the embassy who set us up with a car, went to talk to somebody who was obviously at some point in the CIA who gave us a political perspective, met the chief marketing officer at Coca-Cola, which had just moved their operation there 18 months prior. And just as an anecdote, I was talking to the guy at the consulate in an open cafe area. And suddenly this woman comes walking toward me from a distance, looking and sort of tilting her head and saying, "Professor Modica? Is that you, Professor Modica?" And I looked up, and it's a former, it's a Darden alum, former student. And I recognized her immediately. And I said, "So what are you doing here?" And she says, "Well, I'm arranging an art exhibit in New York with the Rockefeller Foundation. And I was like, oh my God, what a world we live in. And then she looks at the consulate guy. She says, do you two know each other? And she knows him because she stays at his place in Bangkok when he was stationed there. So it was one of these little small world run-ins. But the point of the story is, instead of just going and seeing the pagodas in Myanmar, which is obviously we do, I kind of love to dig down and put myself in places where I'm completely out of my water. And that's what these courses do. And they do a good job of it.
All right. Well, let's talk about the Japan Global course. Shizuka, would you like to share a little bit about what this course is about? What students do when they're in Japan?
Well, the main themes are the same across the global courses as we have discussed. But for Japan course, we start out in Tokyo for a couple of days, few days, 3-4 days, I guess. And then we transit to Kyoto. But on the way down to Kyoto, we have a day trip in Nagoya. And as you know, Nagoya is a mecca of automakers. So Toyota headquarters and factories are there. And if we are lucky, we get to visit Toyota factory to see Kanban system, right there. And then we go down to Kyoto and spend a couple of days there. But covering 3 cities in 6-7 days is a very tough task, and let alone to say we understand Japan or Japanese businesses. So we have a very challenging task as our curriculum designers, and so that's from faculty perspective, we struggle what to present. I'm sure that all faculty members who lead global courses feel that way. What is the right mix to present to students to organize their experiences? But we try our best to mix different cultural and business activities. So, but in recent years, we started to take the students out of the city, outside of Kyoto City, so that they could see what else is going on. So that's yeah. And what do you think, Mark?
Yeah, I think that's been a real addition to the curriculum. Whenever people are traveling to Japan and they ask me what should I do, my recommendation is always 3 things. You should see Tokyo and understand that sort of, the Blade Runner experience of Tokyo. You should see Kyoto because it's the old traditional, when everybody thinks about, traditional Japan, Kyoto is the center of all of that. And you should go to the country because the countryside is really where the deep values of Japanese society come from. And I probably would argue that's true in any country, right? Because we sort of grew out of the agricultural, the move from hunter-gatherer to agriculture. So going to Keihoku, this older part of the northern part of Kyoto Prefecture, where it's lumber and rice, is really eye-opening for the students. So, getting that balance and getting an appreciation that we're just sort of seeing the elements that put the country together, that put Japan together. And we encourage people and actually believe that people will go back to these locations because they've gotten a taste that, maybe they want to satiate a little bit more.
And also we do our best to organize small group activities where 4 to 5 students on their own will get from the hotel to specified site of small businesses. so that they can have some intimate conversations. And that way they could actually feel the city and being able to move on their own from one place to another and experience, small business or some other cultural activities on their own without faculty's supervision. So, and we debrief on their experiences. And it seems that students love that small, activity. So,
yeah, I started doing that years ago, many, many years ago in India, where, it was sort of go and meet these people in this location. And the students would say, well, how do I get there? And I said, I don't know. Tell me when you get back. Right. And so they have to figure all that out on their own. I had a group of 3 come back and were debriefing. And they said the visit was interesting, but coming back was even more interesting. We ran into a group that was going to a wedding party and they invited us along. So, they had of their own sort of, serendipity. It had an absolutely fabulous experience that no one could have designed for them, right? So the other thing we do is to keep track of all this is we have what we call the last thought of the day exercise. Do you want to describe that, Shizuka?
Go ahead.
So at the end of the day, you enter on our website, the Canvas, where we keep track of all the classes in Darden. And they enter in, what is it, about a paragraph or maybe a paragraph or 2?
Yeah, up to 150 words, they say.
And I think they might go over that sometimes. But then their fellow classmates can read that, and Shizuka and I make a point, the faculty always make a point on any one of these courses to read those in the morning before the daily debrief. So we can keep track of where people's thinking is, different threads that people are pursuing, and to kind of keep the finger on the pulse of the group. So that's an important part of the curriculum. And so people have a responsibility to add to each other's discovery list on a daily basis.
Well, thank you for sharing all of these details. I think these courses are so great to hear about. I mean, they're one-of-a-kind experiences. You cannot go and travel to these countries and just do this as a tourist there. And gosh, what an incredible experience to have as an MBA student. We've talked a lot about, the impact of these courses, what you're trying to do with these courses. But Marc, Shizuka, how do you see this, adding to the Darden experience? So Shizuka, can I start with you? Is that all right? How do you see this adding to the overall MBA experience? Because obviously these global courses, full-time MBA students participate in them, part-time students do as well. Executive MBA students actually have required global residency or global residencies, depending upon the format. So this is very much a part of the Darden experience for many of our students.
Yes, and the biggest, I think, is, which we haven't spoken about, is networking among students. And they form really strong bonds through these courses. And that networking, effect, they're going to carry throughout their life beyond, this Darden. So, and one of the things that I tell all my students are like, you will be calling on each other when something goes wrong at work after Darden or after, graduation. So they do form strong bonds in getting to know each other, strengths and weaknesses, positive and negatives, and their talents, everything throughout these courses by working together before they go, as a group, a small group, and then on site through lots of, socialization, if you know what I mean, by drinking or eating together and doing stuff together 24/7, right? So that's, I think, the biggest contribution of this particular course, global residencies.
Yeah, so in that respect, it's like Darden. is every day, except turned up a little bit higher because you're living with each other. You're seeing, you're being exposed to new things together. So it's just a sort of the Darden experience on steroids, as the old saying goes.
Yeah.
The other thing is that, you know, the students will take a global economics course and have all of these different models that, you know, talk about the demographic intersection with, you know, the economic development. Here you're seeing it right in situ, and you're getting to ask questions about all those things we've learned in class. And you're starting to see how it plays out differently in different places. I think I was telling you, Brett, the other day that the metaphor is sort of like a biological metaphor. If you look at life around the globe, you see amoeba, you see tropical plants, you see predatory animals, you see all sorts of different manifestations of life. And they all look very, very different from the outside. But on the inside, they're all solving the same problems, right? They're trying to find a metabolite, you know, they're trying to control the ionic concentration across a membrane, right? How much water do you need and how much is too much? They're trying to figure out how to procreate, et cetera, et cetera. And business is like that. We're solving the same problems in Vietnam that we are in Sweden and that we are in, you know, Chicago. But we're doing it in really different ways. We're accumulating capital in different ways. We're maintaining social welfare of the working people in different ways. You know, it's just, there are a lot of choices to make about how you want to work together to create and distribute value, which is really my interest in negotiation. You know, the whole field of negotiation, the whole activity of negotiation is simply the creation of value and then the decision as to how to distribute it, right? And that's what people are doing when they get together. And we do it in very different ways, depending upon the history, the context, the culture, whatever. And that's an amazing opportunity. Shizuka?
Yes, and just to piggyback on it, is truly to become a global leader, so to speak, is to become an authentic, authentic self without a fixated center. And you should be able to pivot in different circumstances, but you cannot lose yourself. So, Brett, you asked us, who are we? Who am I? Right? You got to know that. But you yourself evolve over time. So keeping a good assessment on knowing yourself very well and be authentic in any circumstances and become effective. That's what I'm hoping the students will think about through these global courses.
Yeah, I heard a podcast, as a matter of fact, just this morning. And the scholar and researcher was talking about leadership. And he said that oftentimes we pick our leaders, particularly in the Western world, based on their sort of self-confidence and assuredness. And he said that this is actually not the kind of leader that performs the best. The leader who performs the best is the one who is humble and not so self-assured and who is questioning and has that, what do you call it? Did you say earlier, Shizuka, the mind?
Don't know mind?
Yes, don't know mind. The don't know mind is a really important thing. And this is helpful because it shows you that nobody knows.
Right. Especially with this generative AI and its impact on businesses and on our daily life, I just don't think we know what's going to happen.
And that's a good thing.
Yes.
Well, Mark, I wonder, what are you looking forward to in the months ahead? Are you working on anything right now or looking forward to anything in particular?
I'm looking forward to this course in Vietnam. I have a course coming up in Q4 of the second year, Q4, on conflict transformation, which I get a lot of satisfaction out of, exploring that topic with Darden students. You know, the difference between reacting to conflict and responding, right? And what our choices are and how we can think about them. Then Shizuka and I will spend some time in the summer in Japan and our course in South Korea. And then we'll be back teaching a course in the fall in Japan. Yeah. So that's what I'm looking forward to. The adventure continues.
How about for you, Shizuka? Anything in particular you're looking forward to?
Yes, among all those global courses and other courses that I will be teaching, I am excited to be trained as an online game facilitator because I am not a gamer or an online, all those game person. And as part of the courses that I'm teaching, I am being trained to become a facilitator. So that's a big unknown for me. And I'm excited about that.
And one last thing, we have 2 students that we are taking on a global course to Costa Rica this summer. And those are our 2 grandchildren.
Okay, yeah.
So we like to take them. We do the same thing with them that we do with the Darden students, to go and see the eclipse in the eastern Oregon or the whales in Digby Bay in Canada. Or we like to get them out into the planet as well.
Well, they sound like very fortunate people to get to do those kinds of things. So that is awesome. Well, last question for the 2 of you. Thank you so much for everything that you shared here. I've really enjoyed hearing about all the global courses and the incredible places Darden students have an opportunity to travel to. Shizuka, can we come to you with this question first? What's a piece of advice you would have for our listeners? We have a number of prospective students who listen to this podcast thinking about their own MBA journeys. Something that you would encourage them to think about or consider.
You ask big questions. Wow. This is something that I just said to my students this morning as a closure of a course. And you're gonna get whatever that you put into a course or a program. So just be aware of that. Whatever that you put into Darden experience, you're going to get a return. But if you don't put whatever that you need to or want to, you won't get anything out of it. So I just want every student who comes to Darden to be fully engaged with every experience and opportunity that they may encounter, both good and bad.
I think that's great advice. So it's come up more than one time on the podcast. The more you put in, the more you get out of the experience here.
Yes.
All right, Mark, word of advice for our listeners?
For those listeners who are looking into getting an MBA or furthering their education at Darden, I would say make sure you understand how we at Darden approach learning, because if you're looking to be sort of, what's the word? I don't want to overdo it, force-fed or sort of told what to think and where to go and how to grow. This is not the right place for those people. But if you are really ready to engage with the community of learning we have here, both the faculty, the students, and frankly, the staff as well, this is just an absolutely wonderful place. I'm so happy that we landed here in 1998. We've seen a lot of, Shizuka and I saw a lot of great teaching when we were in Japan because we had faculty from all over the world, Harvard, here at Darden, London Business School. Shizuka was exposed to some really great faculty when she did her master's at Harvard. And we've seen the people here teach and learned so much from them. This is truly a remarkable place. And if you decide that you want to be a part of it, it's a great growth experience, regardless of how old you are.
Well, Marc, Shizuka, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Thank you for sharing your time and your perspective and experiences with us today. It's been such a pleasure having you here.
Thank you. It's been a joy.
Yes, thank you for your great questions.
And now it's my interview with Marc and Shizuka Modica, two faculty members here at the Darden School of Business. As always, if you have any comments, suggestions, requests, anything you'd like for us to cover here on the podcast, we're all ears. You can be reached at Darden, that's DARDEN, @virginia.edu. Till next time, stay safe, be well, and thanks for listening.